Ready.
Hello and welcome back to the 11th Annual ADHD Awareness Expo. I'm Elaine Taylor-Klaus.
And I'm Diane Dempster, and we're the co-founders of Impact ADHD, now Impact Parents, and we are super excited to be part of this year's expo.
In just a minute, we're going to talk to you about how to handle things when a pandemic, ADHD, and parenting collide. But first, we want to remind you to sign up for the free virtual goodie bag that's filled with lots of great gifts from all the ADHD Awareness Expo speakers and sponsors.
Impact Parents provides online parent training and coaching, which is part of recommended treatment for kids with executive function issues and ADHD. You can find us at impactparents.com. But a little bit about us. So Elaine and I are both coaches. We're both moms of what we call complex kids. And my story is that I spent a lot of years being what I call executive function mom and being really frustrated because I couldn't figure out how my kids' brain worked, and I got angry more than I wanted to, and really felt like I was having to manage the entire family and wasn't really serving my family well because I was doing everything instead of helping them to do it more effectively.
And I'm Elaine, and I have a similar but different story in that I was not executive function mom. I was overwhelmed and lost mom. And I was a mom who, in the early years, I didn't know that I had my own ADHD and anxiety and learning issues. And so I was struggling a lot to just keep the balls in the air and keep my family moving. And I didn't understand how to help my complex kids. And it turned out it needed to start by helping myself. But that took me a while to figure out. When I discovered coaching and got some support for myself, it began to transform how I was communicating with my kids and my family, and it changed everything. And when I met Diane and she had this parallel experience, we knew we were onto something. So at Impact Parents, we're all about teaching parents how to take a coach approach to raising complex kids, and we do that with training and coaching. So we're going to do a little training here today. You ready to go?
Well, what I'm going to say is that it's, we're not going to teach you how to be your kid's coach, nope. But we are going to help you with some concrete strategies and approaches to helping your kids. And what I want to start by saying is that part of what makes coaching magical is that we're not going to just give you ideas of things to do. We're actually going to help you put it into practice. And so that's really where the magic comes in and where a lot of parents get stuck. So we're talking about pandemic.
Real quick, so if you like what you hear from us, you can find out more from us at impactparents.com. And now take it away, Di.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about kind of the intersection of pandemic and ADHD and parenting, because parenting is hard on a good day, and parenting a kid with ADHD is harder on a good day. And when we're in the middle of a pandemic and everything is a little crazy and chaotic, and some of you are dealing with online school, and some of you are dealing with hybrid school, and some of you are dealing with pods, and some of you are dealing with fears about your health. And I mean, there's all this stuff going on, and everybody's stress level is a little bit maybe more than a little bit higher than normal. And it's just not for many of us, not a great parenting moment. So we want to give you some ideas of things to focus in on that hopefully will make things a little bit easier in this really challenging time.
Right. So whenever Diane and I try to put together talks, we always start by saying, sort of contextually, where are we? Middle of a pandemic is kind of a fascinating place to be. And then we look at, okay, what are three things? Because we don't want to overwhelm, but we want to give you some really good stuff to leave with today. So we sat down and we said, okay, what are the three things that are most important for parents right now in the coming months, right? Where we are right now. And so what we identified was, one, take care of yourself. And we'll talk more about that and take it out of theory and into practice. Two is to really focus on relationships over task. And three is to not just focus on the research and collecting information, but to really start doing something with it. It's how you apply it that we want to.
Well, and what I would say, Elaine, in addition to that is, a bunch of you are probably going to maybe turn off a little bit because you're looking for strategies. Give me ideas. Tell me what to do when my kid won't focus on online math class. And so fear not, we will leave you with some concrete ideas and strategies. And we want to tell you that how you approach the situation is more important than what you do in the situation, because the challenges we have right now in the middle of a pandemic are going to be very different than the challenges that you're going to have a year from now, or you may have had 6 months ago when your kid was struggling in in-person school. I mean, so we really want to help you with a toolbox and not just a bunch of things to do.
All right. So let's start with taking care of yourself. We all know it in theory, the quintessential put your oxygen mask on first. We're supposed to do, and most of us are running around like hamsters on a wheel, and we're not sure how we can do what we need to do. It takes twice as long to get groceries handled and just the basics of life. How can we really take care of ourselves? And we hear this objection from parents a lot. How do I put me on the list when the list is so long and so much of it is so important? Right.
Well, and so the first thing we want to do is give you a little permission. And a lot of the traditional methods of parenting support talk about you need to have structure and you need to have consistency and you need to have reward charts and you need to have all this sort of stuff. And so what we want to talk a little bit about is the myth of structure and consistency, because it's hard. I mean, I don't know, I was on the phone with a client yesterday and she's like, we've got this matrix system where we make money, we do this and then we add points and it gets kind of overwhelming for some people. Some people can handle it and they got it and it's not a problem, but other people, it's structure and consistency is just not your thing. And so we want to give you permission to find your thing instead of trying to do it exactly the way somebody else is telling you how to do it.
So if somebody handed you a reward chart or you read something in a book or in a magazine, even ours, you don't have to do it just the way that they say to do it, right? The structure that works best for kids with complex issues, with ADHD, and all of these other stuff that's going on in our world is what we call flexible structure. You want to create structures, you want to put structures in place, and you want to make sure they have a little movement in them. You want to make sure they have enough capacity to change as things pivot and change, because as we all know, things are pivoting and changing every day and every week. So we have to be able to be adaptive. So we don't want to let structure become the taskmaster. We want it to be a tool to accomplish what we want to do with it. It's not the goal in and of itself. It's a tool to achieve what we want to achieve.
Well, and what we know is that part of what happens in these kids' brains is if something gets boring, they shut down. And so if you've got the same reward chart or same system you've been using for a month or 2 weeks or however long it is, there's some possibility that your kid's gotten bored with it. And you might need to mix it up and change it and be creative. And you might get bored with it and need to mix it up and get creative. And underneath all of this is the second concept, which is about making sure that whatever system and structure you have works for everyone, not just for your kid, not just for you, but really take into consideration, how does it fit into the family dynamic?
And sometimes that can be hard to do, because what we hear is a lot of parents will say, well, if they would just use this, if they would just put a checklist, if they would just do whatever, I know what they need to do. And we think we know what they need to do because we know what might work for us. But what's really important is to check in with them, to collaborate with them, to help them figure out what works for them. You may be surprised that what works for them is not what you would choose, but it actually does work for them. Yeah. And so we got to give them the opportunity to collaborate with us. We want to bring them into problem solving instead of give them the solutions. And that's the shift.
That's a shift, right? And so then the third piece of taking care of yourself is taking what we call the marathon view. And knowing that it's not just about getting through these 3 months or 4 months or whatever we're going to be in more of lockdown or whatever. It's really about knowing that what you're trying to do is to set your child up for success for their future. Don't worry about their future. That's not what we're talking about. It's like, oh my gosh, they're never going to get into college. What we're really talking about is just understanding that this stuff takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And the more patient you are and calm you are as you go through the process, the easier it's going to be to make some real sustainable change.
Yeah. And so one of the, we talk about not catastrophizing, right? We want to, the marathon view lets us go through it step by step and not worry about whether this faltered or failed because we got another chance, right? So we want to keep going. Slow and steady wins the race. So taking care of yourself in the context of don't create structures that are too hard for you to manage. Make sure your systems work for everyone, including the kids and you, and really give yourself permission to take a marathon view, slow and steady. Okay, what's next?
The second thing is about relationship over task. And this happens all the time. I don't know about you, but it's like as parents, you think about the amount of time you spend talking to your kids about what assignments are missing or what do they have to do today for class, or did they do this, or is their room cleaned up? I mean, the stuff of life versus the amount of time that we spend talking to our kids about what are their interests and what makes them laugh and kind of creating fun and relationship with our kids. I mean, most of us are upside down compared to what we would want to have in terms of a balance of the amount of time we spend with our kids.
So, you know what jumps out at me, this whole notion of relationships. When one of my kids did an Outward Bound class a bunch of years ago, and when she came back from it, this is what she learned from her peers and from her leaders, was that she had been so focused on the task, on doing what they said needed to be done, because she's a rule follower, right? That she was having a hard time connecting and making relationships with her peers. And it's the same for us as parents. If we're so task focused, it's really hard to cultivate the trust and the openness and the honesty in a relationship. So stepping back and allowing relationship to be every bit as important as whatever needs to be done. It's a hard thing for us as parents because we have a lot to do. And it's probably the greatest gift we can give our kids, not only in terms of our relationship with them, but in teaching them to value relationship in their life and not letting the doing overwhelm their ability to be with their peers and their friends.
Well, so and part of this is about the journey towards independence. And I think we lose this as parents. Is like, ultimately, it's not about getting through the class this semester or getting good grades in high school or whatever it is. It's not about the task at hand. It's about walking our kids step by step through the process of becoming increasingly more independent at doing whatever they're doing in their life. And the foundation of that is trust and collaboration so that they can become independent. Like, and I see parents do this all the time, Elaine, I'm sure you do too. It's like this sort of, we drag our kids through their schooling kicking and screaming. It's like we've got all
I used to say it was dragging them to their own success. Right?
Exactly. It's a sort of, we know what to do. We've got to do this, then you got to do that. And we're really controlling what's going on for them, kind of creating this little bubble for them so that they will be successful. And what often happens is that these kids start getting resentful over time. They want to be more independent, and we don't know how to do anything other than control them. So what you really want to focus in on is, how do I help my child to become increasingly more independent rather than just focusing on controlling them and getting this stuff done?
Okay, so how do you focus on relationship over task? One is to realize that we sort of hit on it in the last section. What works for you might not work for your kid, and vice versa. So really fostering that independence and giving them more control and guiding them through it instead of either controlling it or throwing up your hands and saying, okay, you do it, right? Really being in that collaborative place. The second is what I've been saying a lot throughout this pandemic is we have to make sure not to let school get in the way of our kids' education. Right? Like, I know that we have tasks to do and school to do, and it's important. And it's really important that we continue to foster a love for learning, especially now in this really bizarre environment. And so helping our kids see what's in it for them, what they're curious about, helping them learn other things, even if it's not in the curriculum, and maybe lightening up our expectations around the curriculum so that we can really engage in thoughtful conversations about what's going on in the world, because that's where they're really going to learn the most right now. The world's kind of a fascinating place. Right?
Well, and the example I would give is, in fact, it was a mom yesterday who was talking about the fact that with online learning, the teacher has started reading the books to the kids online, and the child can't process auditorily. And so, and the subject is boring, right? It's something that's completely not interesting to the child. And so we talked about working with a teacher to develop an accommodation to pick a book that the kid likes, a superhero book, or something else that's of a topic that they like. Mom was willing to do the reading with the child to demonstrate the same skill, but it's kind of thinking out of the box in a way that helps your child to really focus on developing a skill and learning rather than on following all the schooling rules and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And the third thing we want to hit, and Diane, I want to be mindful of our time, is we want to suggest that you spend a little bit of time thinking, either you or you with your co-parent or even you with your kids, how do you want to remember this time? This is a pretty unusual time in all of our lives. None of us can expect this to be a forever thing, thankfully. But how do you want to look back on it 10 years, 20 years from now? How do you want to remember everybody experiencing it together as a family? Because that's really where leaning into relationship can make a huge difference. What's the most important thing for you about these relationships? And how do you want to foster that in the weeks and months to come?
Yeah. The third thing I'm going to focus on, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but so many of us, because especially because we're kind of trapped in right now, are spending a lot of time doing research, and we talk to parents all the time, and there's no lack of information on the internet, but where parents are getting stuck is really about kind of, how do I do this? How do I actually put these ideas into practice? And so our third concept is to stop focusing so much on gathering information. Get off the internet and try something. This is about experimentation. This is about what we call experimenter mind. There's not a right answer here. There's not something that's going to fix your child's executive function challenges. It's really about being creative and clever and resilient and patient and calm and all those things that we want to be able to be. But that's really a big part of what can help us to be able to be successful in our work.
Well, and so here's what I would add is that, you know, for parents of kids with ADHD, in the pandemic, not in the pandemic, but when you're trying to parent complex kids, there's so much information, and we spend so much time collecting it and gathering it and doing webinars and doing fabulous summits like this and reading magazines and getting newsletters. We get inundated with information. You know, every time I ask somebody, how did you find us? The answer is almost always, well, I don't really know. Like it was this or this or this, you know? So, and like, we're part of that information providing, like we're all about it. We think it's great. And at some point you got to take the information you have and stop. Use what you're getting in this summit. It's amazing, all these great resources, and stop and start working on applying it. Get the support you need to apply it if that works for you. But let go of that need to keep pulling in information and start figuring out, okay, how do I want to use it? Okay.
Awesome. So the three things.
The technique we want to teach in that is this notion, we call it ask, don't tell, right? Is to begin to focus on asking more questions, getting curious with your kid. If you want to apply what you're learning from all this stuff with one strategy, start asking your kid more questions and stop telling them what you need them or think they should be doing. That one strategy will begin to shift and help you apply what you're learning. So Diane, we're at about 18 minutes. We need to wrap it up.
Awesome. So take care of yourself, focus on the relationship over the task, and get off the internet and try something. So we appreciate you taking the time to listen to our video and our tips and ideas today. If you want to reach out to us and find out more, you can find us at impactparents.com. And remember to sign up.
Parents, because a lot of you may know us as Impact ADHD, and you can still find us there too, but impactparents.com.
And remember to sign up for the virtual goodie bag if you haven't done so already.
Take care, everybody. You've got this.